Well, it's intriguing, but to go would cost me greatly. So what percentage of the show would I be taking?
Fair enough, you'd want a piece of all the action. I'd give you 7. We could shake and make it happen.
I wasn't born this morning. 18 would be just fine.
Why not just go ahead and ask for nickels on the dime?
15.
I'd do 8, 12, maybe 9, 10. Don't you want to get away from...
Good evening, Dominica. Welcome to The Other Side. We're here every Tuesday evening from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We present the views which are different from what you normally hear on a range of current event topics. This evening, we have a great show planned. I love this topic, in fact. I love it, because it's something I read about a lot. This evening, we'll be talking about bridging the political divide. But before we get deep into that, deep into that, I think Sam has a soapbox. I'm not going to read the quote today because that's going to take up time.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to jump into that soapbox that Sam have there.
You want to jump into my soapbox?
You see, there we go again. There we
Good
go.
evening, audience. It's really nice to be here again on another Tuesday. Good evening to our guest. I guess by now everyone knows it's Professor Bruno is going to be our guest.
I was trying to intro him after, you know.
Oh, you will?
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I'll give you.
We wanted to jump into the soapbox and then,
I won't
you know.
take the buzz out of you. But today it's my opportunity to speak on a topic that, you know, I think we should be looking at. And today's soapbox ties into what this program is going to be about. Pretty much, it's about bridging the gap. Basically, it's easy to get along with people that agree with everything you agree with. So if you're Catholic and you meet someone that's Catholic, you're not going to have any debate with them. But if someone doesn't share your religion or share your political views, then it requires some sort of maturity and discipline and a sense of community and really maturity in order to bridge that gap. So there are some concerns that I have, and many of you share those concerns. We look other places and we see societies being torn down by violence in particular. And that's deeply disturbing. We go through the Caribbean as far north, we don't want to pick on anyone, as far as Jamaica, all the way down to Trinidad, Guyana, and many islands in between. And we're grateful, you know, that Dominica isn't lacking in violence, but the level of violence is not acceptable in Dominica that it is in some places. And unfortunately, when you get to criminality and violent crime, and it's practiced and it is accepted and it is, you know, promoted by persons in society, and there's a divide, then it creates an opportunity for criminality to set in. And once the culture of criminality sets in, it's very difficult to root it out. And we see that all over the Caribbean, and we get flare-ups in Dominica, but I don't think we have that level, you know, that some of the others are at, and we'd like to keep it this way. There was a particular walk that occurred in Dominica on last Wednesday, and I think it's called a Walk for Peace and Prosperity. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. The words are beautiful. And, you know, I did pay attention. Organizers did do their best to not to provoke the police. And we've seen some of this before, but they did seek to walk through town and talk about who doesn't want to walk for peace and prosperity. I do that every day. I walk for peace, you know, think positive thoughts and so on. And so you commend, I mean, protesting is a part of a democracy, and people should have a right to walk to promote the concerns that they have or what they don't like, but they do it for peace and prosperity. And so we certainly hope that this is the start of a new consensus, that whatever the differences are, that we will continue with peace and harmony and prosperity, trying to find common ground. We are all citizens of Dominica, and we should all respect each other regardless of how strongly we feel about our views. But everyone doesn't share this, and let's play a tape, and I will touch on this. Hopefully, this is an anomaly, but you will hear it for yourself, and I'll talk a little about this.
And I think we are cowards. We are cowards in that country. How can we allow people to just ride roughshod over us like that now? People just taking advantage of us, kicking us, foreigners, locals, politicians, police. We're Dominicans. That's not who we once were. We were fighters. We fought back. And now all of a sudden everybody's so afraid. I mean, the young people is not afraid of killing each other, particularly the men, but they're afraid of where the real criminals hiding the millions. They're afraid of going there and get money. Go to them and get money, and I'm making no apologies about that. All who want to vex can vex. Those criminals, them little youth man, them little ghetto man that going to rob liquor money and thing. People that stealing all your patronage and you're getting nothing. More than election come, they come and feed you with rice, red hot barbecue, free jam, give you money to buy a screw tar for, and the money is so cursed, then you have to die on that screw tar. That's how they operate. They give you money, they put all the curses on the money, casting the spells, incantations, and you have to die on that scooter. So the scooter they give you that was not for free.
Okay, I probably don't even need to say any more on that. I think we all forget about the political side this person speaks from. I condemn this wholly, and sometimes it's come from the side that I support now. Sometimes it comes from the other side. It doesn't matter, people. There is no space in our society for this kind of utterance, and especially aimed at young people. Basically, encouraging young people to engage in criminal activity. What advice would an elder have to where is this coming from? Instead of trying to guide and encourage young people to do positive things, to defer gratification, to invest, to educate themselves, and to improve themselves, and so that that's the advice that we give our children. I'm sure the gentleman wouldn't give his child that advice to go and do. It's someone else's child that may be slightly, and sometimes the young mind is not as developed as our older mind. So when we influence them, we just need to be very careful with what we influence them to. So my friend, I'm not even going to say who we all know the voice, and it's not personal. You're my friend. You know where I am. It's the same love I have for you. And it's not just you, because there are others doing it. I just use this because someone sent me this tape. But this is exactly what we need to not do. And we need to continue to support and to encourage persons, even if we don't agree with them politically, that do things in a peaceful way. And so this is my soapbox that I have today. I certainly hope that it's received in the spirit in which I'm giving it in, because I can tell you, when you look at history and you look at societies where there's a culture of violent criminality, it started somewhere. And oftentimes it's with partisan politicians, as we saw in Jamaica in the 60s and 70s, basically giving people guns and encouraging them to garrison and conduct criminal activities. And now the criminality is so deeply rooted that it doesn't matter what side comes into office, it's there. So let us seek to de-escalate these things, try to find common ground, sure, disagree with each other, sure, protest, do whatever you got to do. This is a midterm of the election. There'll be another election, 2.5 years, a short period of time. Let us try to work peacefully and see what you got to do. And come election time, make your case. And if you can convince the population that they need to go in another direction, I'm sure they will. People are going to act in their own interest, right? So I think this kind of dovetails into what Professor Bruno, our dear friend, we're going to speak to him, who has gone and prepared himself to the political science. And I'm not going to, Tanya, I'll let you do the intro
I was
before
just
you said,
waiting.
yeah, okay.
Sam Magina. Yes, guys. So this evening we're talking about bridging the political divide. And our guest with us is Mr. Alex Bruno. I think everybody knows him. I don't think everybody knows his background in terms of his education and what he's doing right now. But most know that he is, I think they call you a political scientist.
Yeah.
But I prefer the trained political philosopher. And the co-founder and former strategist, political strategist of APP. Right, guys? I'm going to read a little bit of your bio so people can have
Okay.
a little knowledge of it. So Alex is also a proficient radio broadcaster, a well-known cultural practitioner, social activist, dramatist, playwright, artistic director, promoter, entertainer, and calypsonian who has served Dominica with distinction. Alex is an unapologetic optimist, a consummate patriot, and a professional who, what's that word, Alex? Pontificates in the interest of the nature isle. Yes. So Bruno believes in the unbridled Dominican spirit, and his unrelenting work over the past 3 decades bears testimony to this. Yeah, interesting. So I can say, as a professor of political science and government, Bruno remains engaged and can relate with the younger generation. In addition to his engagements as professor, Bruno is director of operations of One Caribbean Culture and managing director of Caribbean Agency for Political Advancement. So that's a brief on the bio for Mr. Alex Bruno, our guest this evening. How are you, Mr. Bruno?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm
You're
very
doing
good. What about you?
I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm trying to look at that tie there. That picture on the tie. What is that?
I think probably it's musical notes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
in the form of flowers. Yeah.
In the form of flowers. Okay. So it's nice to have you on the show with us.
Well, it's good to be here. I'm happy for the invitation, and I avail myself to you and my brothers to ask whatever question and to get involved in whatever discussion. I'm open, I'm honest, and willing to answer any question, no matter how difficult they come.
I want to dive in because Sam kind of, I don't know, Sam provoked me. As I had a little experience this week. I was online and I saw a post from, I would say, yes, a fellow radio host. Yes. And I was really taken aback by this post. Since we're talking about divide.
Yeah.
We heard a clip from, what you played there, and that was definitely encouraging divide and, as you say, violence. This post that I saw as well did the same thing, and I want to read it. Okay, it says, those workers inside of Domlec, no, them blue blues inside of Domlec, yes, all you. Those of all you that like to frustrate people because of politics. Ownership changed. The company belongs to us. Do not try to sabotage our company to prove all you dirty political point, because we will boss all you are. That is what I read. And I said to myself, but what? Is that person serious? I felt the same way, the same kind of emotions you have for that
And we
clip.
must equally condemn. I mean, this one didn't actually call for people to rob people, but
No, they
that's
threatened
just
people.
But that's just somewhere on the spectrum,
Sam, I don't think you should don't even try to make it look nicer than the other one.
I just said I condemn it, and they're both nonsense.
And
So
these
let's
two things, the clip and this post is opposite sides. We all know that, right? And I had to bring it up because it leads me into this question. And I want you guys to think about it too. When we're referring to our mood, our energy in this political environment that we're in, I want you all to choose, right? Where do you think our people generally lie? And I said generally. Are we aggressive? Do you think we have a fierce civility? Or are we civil? Or are we just, maybe we have chronic niceness? Which one do you think we are right now, Mr. Bruno?
Well, I think we're a mix of all of what you mentioned. But most importantly, I think there is a prevailing sense of rational ignorance which exists in our system. And rational ignorance pretty much is a self-imposed ignorance for fear of knowing better, because the cost of knowing better is too much. So I prefer not to know what I do not know, because I have to expend too much to know. I will remain in my position and do things the way I think is best. So I think the problem we have in Dominica is more one of rational ignorance than anything else. And I would hastily add that I think Dominicans are by nature very loving people. Dominicans hate violence. Dominicans hate the appearance of rancor and anger. We are a very close-knit people. But with that said, I think we are also lacking, and what I think is mainly lacking, especially in the political sphere, is this sense of rational ignorance, which we just prefer not to know better because it costs too much trouble to know. So I'm just resigning myself to what I believe and what I think, and that is what I think drives this political divide that we have in Dominica on both sides.
For me, I'm sitting down at most days and I'm starting to think, you see this divide here? This going to affect the collective mental health. It's starting to affect my mental health. I just feel like everywhere you go, it's about you blue or you red. You know, that signifies who you are. You know, we've forgotten that, hey, other things make us human. Other things are, you know what I mean? Not about where I affiliate. So I'm just wondering, you said rational ignorance.
Yeah.
How do you think is this going to affect us socially, economically?
Well, it's already affecting us. It's already affecting us. As I said, we see everything through the prism of our political color. So that's a problem. Sam mentioned it earlier. I haven't heard Kenny for the dares yet, but I expect him to chime in. We are at a very, very precarious point in Dominica where a SPAC could create major mayhem for us socially, because we are just so politically infused where our opponents are now our enemies. So we are at the ultimate point of sort of political decay in terms of the partisanship. We are hyper partisan, and the divide in Dominica could not be wider, perfectly across party lines. To walk that back, we have a lot of work to do. So what you're doing here and being on the other side, I mean, I hope the nation realizes how significant a program this is and the effort that you're making. And I hope it really bears fruit, and I think it will. Because we have to reach across the aisle. You cannot gain unity and express love by spreading hate and sowing the seeds of division. There has to be a reaching across. And Sam and Kenny and you, my wonderful sister, I think that is a move in the right direction. And probably those people who normally occupy that side should try to move on the other side as well and have a program where it is traditionally expected that those programs are not held. And that is a very good first step in bridging that political divide. I am so happy. I couldn't wait for this interview, for this invitation. And I look forward to the discussion, and not this one, but other discussions in a similar vein.
I think, thank you, Alex, for being here with us. I think it's a very important point that you made. You know, you would think we're doing something groundbreaking by speaking to people we already speak to every day of our lives. You speak for
yourself, but you and Sam speak to.
Well, you're a foreigner, so.
There you go, through and say, I am telling you, you speak for yourself, you and Sam.
So no, but I want to put an onus on people like ourselves, and there are many more of us than it seems there is, to be able to speak on issues in a mature manner. And you mentioned maturity multiple times, and that's a very important word. Yeah. And I'll give you an example, Alex, and I want your take on these things. Over the last week, 3 significant stories happened.
Yeah.
No one has spoken on those topics with in a manner of sobriety and maturity to the Dominican public. So those 3 topics, the first is self-explanatory, the opening up of the country, which coincides with the fact that American Airlines is starting
daily flights
as of yesterday. And the whole issue of COVID and rebalancing the society, now you're seeing what's happening. People are literally outside. The second is the majority purchase of shares in Domlec from Imera by the government of Dominica, which is significant. And the third, which is higher up on the geopolitical plane, is the Prime Minister of Dominica representing the OECS in signing an agreement to open a consulate in the Western Sahara. which is again a big statement given the ramification it has for our partnerships and our friendships internationally. There is no discourse on these things. What happens typically is one side praises it, the other side attacks it, or if it's too agnostic a situation to even attack, they just leave it alone. They say nothing. But no one talks about it maturely in what it actually means for the country. Mm-hmm. And these are significant. And Alex, I want to take it from your angle.
Yes.
How do you get people who are committed to either keeping the government that they want in power or getting rid of them to admit that there are topics that really transcend that?
Right.
How do you get people?
And I want to touch on a couple of them, Kenny, because I think there are even some more bread and butter issues that we're just not dealing with that affect us every day. And we're just busy with this back and forth thing that seems to be going nowhere. So, Alex, you're the professor.
That is very interesting that you brought this topic up, because I actually was pondering on them earlier on. And Kenny, you are speaking to the issue of bipartisanship, which is an element that is missing in Dominica's politics, again, because of our lack of maturity. I think all parties on the island have not taken the time out to educate their supporters. In fact, whenever we have, this is a good program, that's not a partisan program. I mean, obviously we know that, or we expect, or we suspect that, let's say you and Sam may have a different inclination politically to many. But that is not an issue. The issue is you're gentlemen, learned gentlemen, business people who understand business, understand commerce, and you love your country. So forget the partisanship issue. We have not appreciated that Dominica is beyond the partisanship matter, and things that concerns the state and the nation must be treated as such. The Prime Minister of Dominica is our Prime Minister. He's not the Labour Party Prime Minister. The office of Prime Minister is an office of reference that we must respect and hold to the highest esteem. The Prime Minister who holds the office may not be necessarily honorable, but the office is honorable. And the opposition leader may not necessarily be honorable, but the office is honorable. So until such time we accept that the Prime Minister of our sovereign nation carries the flag of our country, and when he represents us, we should at least treat that with respect, we are going to have problems. Until such time, we're going to have problems. You brought up the matter of Domlek. Briggs made a song, was it Briggs or Hurricane? Was it Briggs? Maleway. He sang about Domlek. We owned Domlek and we had to divest the shares in terms of the nation, the state. Now, somehow, I think by some magical trick, we were able to acquire the majority shares holding in Domlek again as a nation. So this is something we should celebrate. And as Kenny said, I have not heard it. I have not heard it being analyzed. Probably the jury is still out on that. But this is something we should actually look into and discuss it, see what's in it for Dominicans. And probably not expect a bomb CO, but expect us to tie our waist, band together to build our entity, our power producing entity in Dominica. I think some people may believe that because government now owns it, all of a sudden life is going to be free. No. Life is not going to be free. Nothing should be truly free because nothing is really free. Mm-hmm. So that again is another interesting point. And Kenny, you omitted to mention the school opening. The fact that our children are back face to face was another remarkable achievement as well. Albeit I think it was a little bit rushed with 1 week's notice, but it's a good thing to have children back in school face to face. It helps with the culture and the opening of the country in terms of the COVID that we have been going through for the past couple of years. So all these are very significant points that the media, I think, are dragging their feet on. And again, before Sam comes in, I think the media too is a bit guilty, because I do not even know whether we have a thriving media practice in Dominica in terms of an organization. I think MWAD was around then, and a new organization came to take over. But somehow the media is either, I shouldn't say lazy, either is reluctant to get involved, or they are scared, or a mix of the two. Why should you be scared as a media house to analyze a prime minister's speech, to analyze a diplomatic signing, whatever, to analyze the positive spill-off that can result from the opening up of the country following this COVID, we're still through this COVID thing, and our wonderful children going back to school. These are 4 significant points, Kenny, and I'm happy you brought them up. And these are bipartisan issues, meaning issues that both sides of the political divide should be able to discuss. The opposition parties and members of the governing parties equally, because they all stand to benefit Dominica positive. That's the most important thing. Positive spilloffs from those.
Thank you, Alex. What I was referring to when Kenny raised those 3 issues is there are many, many other issues that are affecting people on a daily basis that we need to fine tune, we need to hammer through, we need to work through, that we're not spending the energy and time doing. We don't spend the energy pushing people to perform to their highest level, be it in the, certainly not in the public sector. We don't. Because if someone were to make a complaint about somebody or an agency or delivery of services not being done, you're immediately viewed, your complaint is viewed in a partisan way, and that adversely affects all of us. And, you know, there's no society where everything is perfect. Kenny and I are business people, we run businesses. The customers that are not pleased with the service that I offer provide free consulting to me when they point out where the gaps are, and I'm very happy for that. And then I take that advice and I improve. That's what sensible, successful business people do. Governments need the same push. Certainly, it's usually done with the opposition, and I'm not going to pick on the opposition here, but I'll say that for whatever reason, that's not manifesting itself. I find all across the board on all sides, we're focused on things. I mean, you have the issue of inflation that's affecting households. I think, Tanya, we talked about that and, you know, out air. What are we doing with about those things? My issue is the litter problem, the garbage that we just seem, I mean, 25 years ago when I came and we worked in the Southeast, you know, with school children, I would have thought after a generation or two, culturally, we would have moved to where the consciousness of the Dominican people on all sides of the political divide, at all levels, would be about proper sanitation and, you know, proper management of this nature island. And we're still, you know, we're here and this is not an issue. And I mean, privately, I push and I try to knock on doors as many other people do to deal with these things. But it, you know, somehow we're not getting the traction and the attention that we need on the things that affect people. And I'm sure there are other people with other issues that affect them every day, and we're not hearing them discussed in the political arena. How do we get to where we start dealing with these issues and get people to perform as they're supposed to perform? Is it going to have to either be a partisan thing where I'm going to have to defend everything the government does, or everyone that works for the government, whether they're performing or not, because I'm supposed to be supporting the government and I should be expected, which I can't do that. I can't do that. And other people can't do that. Or how do we get beyond that, Alex?
Wow. Well, we have to get under it before we get beyond it. That is a major problem. And I think we have to go back to the communities and probably to the families. We generally have a high percentage of dysfunctional families. And if your family unit is not functional, you're going to have a divided community. So let's go back to the next level, the community, and re-establish order in the community, place the leadership of those community in the hands of community people. So the politicians must back out a bit. The PAL reps who are playing chairpersons of village councils or who are trying to sort of find their way on either side of the divide into the affairs of the local authority should sort of back out. And this problem is not a new problem. This problem started with Patrick John when he was invited by Frank Barron to run for the Labour, for the DUPP in Roseau, as in the local government. And then Barron came a bit later because he actually was, Leblanc actually beat Barron to Patrick and asked Patrick first. That's why Patrick became first prime minister and member of the Labour Party. Baron and Patrick told me that if he had his way, he would have been a member of the DUPP and run for Baron because he liked Baron. But the point I'm making is that the problem in our local authority started way back there, when somehow some wise politician felt it's best to get the partisanship involved in our local government. And this has been like 40 years, 50 years now. And that's where we are today. So it's not a new problem we have, Sam. This problem didn't start with this present Labour, probably started with the UPP. You see how long ago that was. So how do we solve a problem that is 50 years old? How do we correct a tree after it has grown for 50 years to straighten it? So we have to try to not cut down the tree, but go back to the roots, go back to the community and give more powers to the local authorities, get back more sporting groups, sporting clubs, 4-H clubs, girls' guides, scout, cubs, brownies. We have to go back there, the idea of volunteerism, reorganizing civil society. And it's going to take a couple of decades or more to get back where we were 25, 30 years ago. But unless we do something, we are going to have ourselves in big problem. And the politician, parties and partisanship is not the solution, because every party wants to have their say. So they will do whatever is necessary. So I don't even blame the politicians. I blame the leaders who are failing to do what we need to do to fix the problems that we have in Dominica. That divide that started not now, not 10 years ago, not 20 years ago, half a century ago probably, or long or beyond that. So that is where, Sam, I think the problem is. We have to invest in the youths, invest in education, invest in the babies who are being born now. So hopefully in 20 years' time, those babies who are being born now would say, well, okay, we're going to fix Dominica. Here's how we're going to bring this country together. Until such time, I see us continuing to divide ourselves. I see social strife. I see revolution. I see bloody protest. If we do not stop now, if a messenger like Dr. King does not arise at this moment and say, guys, let us stop, we are going to have physical conflicts. It's going to happen, like it is happening in Jamaica and other places. So we have to stop. The church leaders who are calling on Scud missiles to be placed on the politicians must cease. Preach the gospel, preach unity, preach love. Do not get too involved in the partisanship. Some the pastors who are praying for politicians should not pray for one set of politicians. Mm-hmm. They must pray for all. So it begins with the society, not the politicians alone.
You know, Mr. Bruno, you want to say something?
No, we'll go to a break. And when
I just want to say one thing though. I was hoping you would have really gone to like more of a strategy of where do we begin? Because I feel like what you just explained to us is what we knew. We do know that, you know, like.
Well, I think he's laying the foundation. Maybe he will come up with a strategy.
You know, but I guess that's just my nature. Like, even I in this thing so long. I'm tired.
How long are you?
What we do? No, don't ask me my business. What we doing? How are we coming out of this? You know what I mean?
But before we go to the break,
yes,
I mean, Professor Bruno has outlined what is the state of play. Okay, and that's very important. Before you tackle a problem, you must understand it. So you've laid it out. My contention is that the solution is not a political one.
Nope.
It's a societal one. And part of the issue is that everyone is competing to become government. And whilst they're not government, they're doing nothing. So when they become government, they then act to whatever priorities that they assume is going to win the day. But before they're government,
they're not doing
anything. And this is not the society that we are. So when you leave you leave a community to depend on government to give scholarships, and you're someone in the community who can give a help to 5-10 students, you're leaving dependency on the government. And so the topic that we have here, and Professor Bruno has agreed to counsel us on, is that bridge. Because if you say bridging the divide, you have one side on the other and another side. But in the bridge, there's supposed to be people there.
Yeah, we want to know
constructing that bridge.
Okay.
And it seems to me that we're very good at massaging the divide because, you know, from the political perspective, that's what exists. But there's also room to build that bridge.
But Kenny, isn't it also true that civil society has become partisan.
Of course, it has not just become partisan, it has retreated.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the other part of it, which is that there are people who say, if I do this, it will construe a support for the political environment of the day. So I'll do nothing.
And that's a different divide that's happening, public from politics.
Yes, but
There's
before
a
we go
divide
to
happening
break,
there too.
before we go to break, I'll make a political statement, a statement about something
Lord.
political, and Professor Bruno can deal with it. In 1995, the UWP won something like 34% of the popular vote. So in essence, it was a minority political party who won. Now, don't get me wrong, because it was three political parties, any political party which would have won in that climate would have been a minority party. But we're talking about the context of opposition versus government. In 2000, Labour and Freedom united. You could say Labour devoured Freedom, but it is what it is, and we are here. That gap has grown to where we have roughly, 60-40?
Pretty much.
In terms of the political support?
On the perimeter.
There is no way the opposition can continue a stance of aggression without bridging that same gap. In other words, to win an election, you need to get either people who are sympathetic to you, but not sure about you, to see that you've softened your approach and that you're willing to bridge that gap. Or that you have people who are undecided, who say, you know what, this is the way to go. Or you have people from the dominant party saying, you know what, I'm not happy with the government, and I don't really like these guys. I'm gonna stay. I'm not gonna vote. Therefore, increasing that number.
And I think it goes the other way as well. There's no way you can maintain and stay in power if you don't bridge the gap as well. I think it's very. I think so. I think we let me finish. I think there's no way a government can maintain their office, their remain in power, and see a divide just keep happening, getting the gap getting wider and wider and wider. As Mr. Bruno said, eventually it's just going to be a lot of violence and crime.
It doesn't necessarily mean that they won't stay in power. That's the point. The point is, for a country to function, you need an active, viable opposition, which is at some point appealing, even when people don't agree with them, appealing to even members of the other political party, because you're hearing points of discourse, and Mr. Bruno will help us on that, that you can agree with. Now, there's a
we were going to a break.
Yes, there's a gentleman.
The break will have to wait.
Okay,
there's a gentleman.
Okay.
There's a gentleman called Alvin Thomas who always talks about the Singaporean case and how Singapore as a country, which is a very good story for real. But what he omits is that the political party in Singapore has been in power for 78 years.
Mm-hmm.
The same party.
The same party. Okay, and 40 years of that rule happened before Lee and Koo came along and started to revolutionize that country. So this is a long way of just saying that we need solutions that will appeal not just to people discussing with each other, but people actually learning to deal with the fact that you have real differences that are going to probably stay the same if you keep the same approach. You know, the whole thing. You know, Sam, go ahead.
But Kenny, and before we go to the break, there's been demonstrated in Dominica in fairly recent times that a way to break that cycle. And that gentleman, we've invited him to the program, and he will, that actually did that. Because Joshua Francis in 2014, he did what no one in their right mind thought an opposition could do in the stronghold of the Labour Party. He won that Newtown seat. I wouldn't have put smart money on it, but there's a way in which you can convince people. And when he comes in, he will speak to that. So I don't think all is lost on the 40-60%. It's just that maybe we need to step back. Everybody needs to step back and start looking at the whole approach. And I do believe that Dominica's appetite and the appetite of Dominicans are just ready, for that more respectful approach to really then maybe look at things not in such lockstep, you know. That's my approach. So we have that example. When he comes, he will speak to that. But Professor Bruno, I know you have a lot of thoughts there. I could just see you're a thinking man. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, you'll just let loose on what we've spoken about and share your wisdom with us. Yeah?
No problems.
All right.
I didn't understand.
Right here, right now, I put the offer out. I don't want to chase you down. I know you see it. You run with me, and I can cut you free out of the treachery and walls you keep in. So trade that typical for something colorful. And if it's crazy, live a little crazy. You can play it sensible, a king of conventional, or you can risk it all and see. Don't you wanna get away from the strain? Oh, Apache gotta play, cause I got what you need. So come with me and take the ride. It'll take you to the other side, cause you can do like you do, or you can do like me. Stay in the cage, or you finally take the key. Oh, damn, suddenly you're free to fly. It'll take you to the other side.
Okay, my friend, you wanna cut me in? Well, I hate to tell you, but it just won't happen. So thanks, but no, I think I'm good to go, cause I quite enjoy the life you say I'm trapped in.
Welcome back, people, to the other side. Our topic this evening is bridging the political divide. I'm hearing some music still, yes. Okay. Bridging the political divide, and we have our guest, Mr. Alex Bruno, with us. He is a trained political philosopher, as well as the co-founder and former political strategist of the APP. Mr. Bruno, you're still there? You're hearing us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good.
So the floor is yours now.
And then we'll ask him about APP and so on. Yes.
Yes.
We'll ask about APP afterwards.
You set me up, boy. You nice, okay. I don't mind. Bridging the divide. Love is the strongest force the world has ever possessed. And if we can love, if we know love, we start with love. Politically, we are divided, but politics is seen as a wholesome thing, which it is, but it can be broken down in pieces. There are a number of perspectives involved in politics: the psychological, the cultural, the rational, irrational, and biological. Biology, everybody needs stuff. We need each other. So you work with people who are like-minded and you build a coalition. Psychological, we think, we analyze, and if we put vibes out there that is not too outrageous, vexatious, angry, people will work with you. The irrational even is something that works, because we saw it with Donald Trump in America. He was a quite irrational actor. He became president for that very sense of irrationality. And this idea of the psychological, I spoke about it already. As long as you find a way to get into the people's minds and their hearts, you will. I hear big statements being made of who is a psychologist and who isn't. You don't have to be a psychologist to show love and to empathize and to show care and to reach out and to understand that charisma or positive charisma always helps. So this is the way, Pearl and Kenny and Sam, to go back to the fruits of the spirit. The basic thing, but the most fundamental of them is love. And you cannot teach people to love.
Mm-hmm.
If you have love in you, you have love. You can harness it.
Yeah.
You can find a way to express it. But it's difficult to show someone with no love what is love. And it is difficult even to say that, because love is a gift that is available to all, but not everybody accepts all gifts that are available. And some take more portions, or greater portions of certain things. Charisma is something that too you cannot buy. It's either you have positive charisma or you have negative charisma. So politics is such a tricky thing that the components come together, and if you have more of each, you end up being the victor. If you don't have it, no matter what you do, you're never going to look as if you're going to be a victor. And people do not like following people who do not win in politics. So I do not want to say so much more because I'm in consultation with other people in terms of presenting a more neutral, a more nuanced outfit to embrace all Dominicans politically and culturally, possibly to try and make a difference. That's why Pearl, I'm hesitating to give the full cure. Because
wait, Professor Bruno. I think we have breaking news here. Are you making me read the between your philosophies? Don't speak in parables, brother man. Tell us like it is. You say you're preparing. What is that you say? So give us in lay language because we don't.
Anymore.
Nobody can. You can't tease people like that, Alex. What are you preparing to give us? Give us a little taste now.
Well, in a nutshell, okay. Well, Pearl mentioned earlier that I started the APP, which is true. I envisioned it and created it and invited people to co-found. And we saw in 2 years what the party was able to do in terms of striking a more gentle, more human approach, and making some enemies in the process because there are people who are enemies of love. But the party did well based on my own assessment and that of many Dominicans until I think one of the recruited co-founders decided to become a bit ambitious and lose the vision. So that is now water under the bridge. So I no longer associate with the party in that sense. I am the founder, it will be that forever, but the party I think has somewhat lost its way. I still remain who I am. Someone who is a consummate patriot who will never give up. I have the training, Pearl, Kenny, and Sam. And I think a kind of training which is right for the time. And I'm very current. I am actually going through it, so I have the fire in me. And I am in consultation with some very important Dominicans. As soon as I get off this meeting, we're going to have another meeting again tonight. And we are talking about what can happen and how possibly we can probably help to reimagine the imagination that started 2 years ago and collapsed under the banner of ambition on the part of one. And because Dominicans are crying out for it. I have polled Dominica more than anybody else. And I know what Dominicans are saying. Dominicans know what they want. And if Dominicans see what they want, Dominicans will work with what they want.
So Alex is coming back to lead Dominica to the promised land. Breaking news on Matt tomorrow morning.
Well, I didn't say that quite so, but I guess
they done cut the clip, we. They done cut the clip.
No, Alex,
look for it in the news.
Alex, in truth and in fact, congratulations. You certainly went away. You've prepared yourself. Why not? You're certainly a very likable person and you're a thoughtful person. And I think why not put your hat in the ring if you're willing to do the work? And like you say, you're coming in with a fresh approach. I think that there are lots of people that would be willing certainly to give you a listen and see where you like you say, talent. We don't know how much talent. I don't know how much talent you have. So we all have to watch and see where you go. But that's how it starts. So congratulations. You went out and prepared yourself and you're willing to. I'm sure you have opportunities. You're a professor in the US. You can stay there and you're willing, like you say, to come back and to help to develop, make your contribution to Dominica. So I want to welcome you and congratulate you, in this regard. But I'll go back to the founding APP. You kind of said that, it started and you were very kind of general, but it appears to the public that some major mistakes were made, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they said that you were hiding your hand. You put the pretty ladies up front. Tell us what really went down with respect to the founding of the APP and the situation, if you can keep it in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, the APP was founded on good grounds. And the main intention of the APP was to act as a force to coalesce all support, opposition, incumbent, majority, minority, people who believe that the time was sort of right to think of a new political approach. So it was a sort of a new political beginning, something similar to what Libland did in 1967 with the cultural renaissance. Because it takes one person to come with the idea and the nation to gravitate towards it. And it could be me, it could be Kenny, it could be you, Sam, it could be any one of us here. But I decided, because of my training in philosophy first and political science, to sort of reimagine what our politics can be like. So that's what APP was. And I recruited some people who I felt had the vision and shared similar fire to promoting the mission of the movement. And I think they, in great parts, did. But not everybody think on the same level. And I didn't hide behind because I was scared of speaking out, because I've always been speaking out. And I'm not on record as saying anything negative about Dominica. Nobody, if anybody finds me, Alex Bruno, saying anything that is divisive about my country and my people, present the information and I will resign, retire from public life totally and go in exile forever. Because I know I have never done anything of that nature. APP was just an outfit to try to present like what the other side is doing. So long story short, I think one of the co-founders, only one member, decided to have things their way. And I just heard in the media that I had resigned. How can I resign from something that I created now? That never happened in the history. And then that created bad blood, bad vibes. And I think the nation has lost hope and faith in the movement. I mean, it's quite unfortunate because I spent a great amount of intellect on this, developing this, lot of sleepless nights, lots of energy. So I felt bad at first, but I think Sam is a lesson learned. And coming back from that lesson, I think it only makes me stronger and more resilient to continue to work. And I think Dominicans can wait a little longer to see what is coming next, because I'm a scientist, as you know. I mean, I do not say that to boast, but that's my training. And I am particularly involved in political institutions and governance. So I know a little something about this, and I'm willing to go it at least alone if I have to, and hope that other people eventually realize what is happening. And I think if everything works well, we should see a sort of groundswell of interest and hopefully support in what I think Dominica can be with this new sort of reckoning that I think will eventually happen.
Okay, that's a fair and honest answer. But you know, I'm your friend, but I'm hitting you some serious questions here. The second thing is, you've been associated with polls. Some people even, sadly, they say the fake pollster. You know, what is that about, and how do you that brand? How do you separate yourself from that brand? What happened there?
Well,
tell us.
Thanks for bringing that up. I've never done a poll in Dominica that was not correct. Never. And you can look at it. I mean, some of them are on my Kappa page, and I can send you the results. You'll be amazed to see the kind of advice I give based on the results of my polls. The last election in Dominica went exactly as I thought it would have, in terms of the trends. So if anybody can show me where my poll was fake or wrong, let's talk about it. But
you thought the last election would go 18-3?
I never call an election in Dominica. I have never in my life of doing polls say that party is going to win with that amount of seats.
So why do people ascribe the fact that you gave some feeling of false hope of a change in government on the basis of your polls before the last election?
Okay, let me tell you what happened in the last election. Last election, I got on the ground a mood for change. 82% of the respondents suggested that, we should have something new. But there was something else that I didn't see the people said. Yes, we can have something new, but what? Who? So I didn't respond to that. I just gave an indication that there is a flavor, there's an idea, there is a sort of there's some sort of resemblance of change. And my good friend Peter Wickham of Barbados found the same thing as well, that there was a strong sentiment that leads towards political change. So what the incumbent party did, which was very smart, it retooled, it changed at least 13 candidates, which by my count is 82%, and come back fresh, work on what the people demanded, say we are the change, and the Honorable Prime Minister of Dominica said so in Londonderry, we are the change that you asked for. So my poll was not wrong, Kenny. People were saying that. But the people was also saying change to what? Or to whom? So it's the people who present themselves as the change who got the nod from the people. So I never predicted an election was going to be won by 13 or 18. Never. That's not what pollsters do. We talk about trends and indications. And I can tell you, Peter Wickham got the same feeling when he polled Dominica that I did get in terms of the gross amount of people who were saying, we either not going to vote or whatever the case might be. And it takes good strategy and planning. That's why I applaud the people who got the gig to work as strategists, to pull out a win from a situation that the Labour Party was under during the last election. It was not a very tenable situation. In fact, it was almost a point where it could go anyway. But it's the party with the plan and the strategy that really end up winning political elections. And that's what happened at the last election, Kenny. Never did I mention that any party is going to win. I talk about the resonance of change that was in the air. And indeed, you can say for sure that the Labour Party did do a lot of stuff. They came to Londonderry, changed 13 candidates, and said, this is the change you asked for. I know you can remember that.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. Let's fast forward now. Let's come back to future, because you just, as Sam said, you dropped some breaking news on us.
Come back to future.
Well,
Yeah,
and
come back to present and looking at the future, because you did, you basically let us know that we might have to look out for a new.
You not might.
I just say might. I don't know.
Right.
A group of people to, I don't know, bring change. But I think
Yeah.
a lot of us are thinking you were unable to. You were unable to. How do I say this? You were unable to close that gap within the APP. Clearly, there was some type of divide there between you and the others, or whatever it may be. So why would we trust you now when you say that you have that strategy and you want to share it with us then about,
Well,
imagine that
I
gap
have
we have now politically.
well, you see,
You say you know how to do it and you don't want to share.
I know I will share. I will share. But the fact is, I have the expertise. I know how to get it done. But you cannot strategize against treachery. You see treachery, you can react to it, but you can't strategize. And if people have ambitions that you do not know of, it is difficult sometimes to realize what people can do when they're in those desperate situations. I do not think the situation of APP is a failure on my part, because the strategy of the party had been very well implemented. You saw what the party had been doing. You saw the approach that the party was taking. That's all me. The only thing that I did not do is what one member did. So I should not be taking the fault for that one member. I still remain this professional. Didn't I come to your program? Does it appear as if I'm a divisive, authoritarian, dictatorial guy?
No, we're not saying that. I'm just saying you were unable to, you're unable to bridge that divide within APP, and people look at these things. I'm just saying, when you look at parties and groups and when there's a divide there, you're thinking, boy, that kind of a situation there. I feel like people lack confidence in that sort of thing. So I'm just wondering, and you also shared that you didn't want to share with us, all of your information or your strategies for bridging the divide, that present divide, that present political divide.
And
so
nor do I
how
want
with this new group that you are coming out with.
No, I didn't say a new group. Sam is the one who said a lot.
It's not like that way.
Sam
It's not
said
like
a lot.
that. Okay, so you're just gonna have meetings and talk. You're not
You
gonna
be careful, Sammy said a lot of stuff. Sam might be right.
You just told us you're not having meetings.
But
you're not having meetings. What are they gonna do? Just have meetings?
to give Alex some credit, okay? And you have to give him credit. It's obvious to see that one thing that APP, and Alex, the brand never stuck with me. I didn't get it. I didn't get it, especially the word alternative.
And I can tell you why. Yeah,
but I think if you want to point out something that you all did that was really good, and it's clear to see, and if that was you, then that's a great thing, is that it concentrated on engaging directly in the community, even as an opposition, and giving the idea that opposition parties are not powerless, which is what the mantra usually is, not just in Dominica, but throughout the Caribbean, which is that unless we are in government, we can do nothing other than to get into government. And that, I think people are getting tired of that, across the region, because people don't see people who aspire to be in governance as being powerless along the way. If you're powerless, why should I engage? So it's a good
Mm,
thing.
mhm.
But I want to just ask you once again, how do you get people, especially people who are so-called neutral or so-called politically agnostic, to engage in the society? Because what's happening is that those people have withdrawn.
Yes.
And that's the reason Sam and myself are on this program. We're not here for fun. I mean, well, we actually here for a bit of fun, but we're not here because it's, you know, getting us kudos or you know, it's, in fact, you get some really nasty things said about you. I think I crooked you. Who crooked you out of Monakuma? Was it you or me?
The con man.
I want you. You cook me.
I crooked you?
Yes, I want my money tonight.
You serious?
Any
Tanya
the con
paid.
man won. The con man really held me. And the con
Yeah, I
man
mean, but the point is, how do you get people to engage? Because you see, what happens is, and I know this from people that I know, they see what happens with us, even being the most reasonable, even more reasonable than them, and they see attacks on your character, they see all kinds of stuff, and they say, me, I'm not getting into that. When you're trying to bring people, reasonable people, to the table to talk about their experiences and try and push some knowledge out to people in the country. But it's almost like everyone wants to stay in the same position.
Yeah.
How do you get people to rise above that or just slip into that?
Message. Plan. First of all, a plan to getting it done. A good message that resonates with the people. Strong narrative down to the people's level. The resources, the human resources to drive the message. A strategy to assist with that driving of the message. And I think if those elements are there, people are going to buy. If you have a good product, Ken, it's a good product. And Dominicans are susceptible to these things. You just have to go to the level of the people. Politics is grassroots. Meet the people in their habitat, speak their language, shake their hands, hug them, go to church with them, kiss their babies. Do what you should do, or what you need to do to gain the people's respect and attention. I'll give you a quick story. Mami, one of the biggest Red supporters, and she had so many things to say about me and everything else. I went to her house once with Ras Kelly. And when we push it open, she said, "Who is that Alex Bruno in my house?" And before she knew it, I was hugging her. And then she was tense, and then she just loosened. She says, you hungry? I said, yes. I went straight to her pot and ate from her food. Ask Mommy, she'll tell you. So you have to break the gap, man. You have to bridge the gap. You have to be willing to go down to do the nitty gritty. And again, so that is what I think is necessary. And going back to Pearl, people make mistakes. I'm agreeing that I made a mistake. Probably I should have come out at first and say, look, that is the vision of this thing that I envisioned. That is what we are. But I was advised by people that I probably shouldn't. Or as a professional, you should stay away from the party. And I'm a professional in the field of politics.
And in
so
your
I
defense,
people stayed away, did exactly what they told me to do, and now I even suspect that might have been a setup to sabotage the entire thing.
but in your defense, Alex,
years ago, probably that might have been a different story today as the founder of this movement.
Alex, in your defense, there's an old adage: what don't kill you make you stronger. You learn from those experiences. And I think all you can control is what's ahead of you. And I think the Dominican people, if there's a forgiveness or moving beyond, people want what's best for them. And if in fact you are the one to offer that future, who hasn't made mistakes? Raise their hand. So that's it. I think we get people calling on the line.
I just want to say one thing, though. I feel like we've spoken a lot about this, bridging the divide, but I just don't think we've really touched on the underpinning, the stuff that what is causing people to take that position, those extreme positions. We haven't really touched on. I heard people's plan and all this sort of thing, but what is really,
Yeah. A shift in the fortunes of many, the sort of reliance and dependency.
And are people really aware, though? Are they really aware of the reasons why they are taking these extreme positions? You think they're aware? I know it sounds like a weird question.
Of course they are aware.
I think so.
Why do you say that? That's an interesting question.
I don't know if they're really aware.
I think
it's like how we speak about all the time. People just perceive, they hear that on cue, they hear that on Kyrie and they run.
Defense.
And then and then they don't know it's like that happened to them. They don't know they have a perception of something. You know, I feel like people are not really aware
They just
of where they're
react.
taking these extreme
No,
positions.
I,
And I
I,
think that is before you start to plan and your message and all of that, I think there needs to be an understanding of the underpinning issues.
We have calls
We
coming
have a
in,
lot of
so
calls coming
Yeah,
in.
cut me off. Oh Lord.
Good
Caller,
evening.
you're live. Yes, good
Good
evening.
evening.
Yeah, you asked an interesting question which people like to avoid. So you have a troubled child and you want to fix the child, but you don't want to ask the question as to how the child got broken. But it is a fact that the public has been burnt by these politicians. Yes, they have been burnt. Their perception of politicians and their behavior, I don't want to use specific examples, but yes, the people have been burnt by politicians and they're sick and tired of, and now they've developed an attitude. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Yeah, I kind of
We have
agree.
other calls
Yes.
coming
Yes, not yet. I feel like we have these divisive emotions, but we just don't know. We're not really aware of where it's coming from, you know, the behavior, the divisive behavior and emotions.
You don't want to get on the number.
And I feel like, yes, I'm going to give them the number, Sam. I think it's really important that should be addressed. But the lines are open, guys. The numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096. Let's take this call. Call you live on the other side.
Hello, good evening to you all, and
Hi, good evening.
to you, and of course, Alex,
also,
hello, my good friend.
yeah.
Listen to the program that I'm saying we have to be very open, honest with these issues and how we can solve it going forward. We had a youth parliament the other day, and I think the young people did extremely well. And I suspect we are training them so they could become good members of parliament and good leaders, not only in government or in parliament, but in civic organization, in the community, because a government is not all to run a country. A country is run by its people. And unless we bring back professionalism in what we do, we'll always have problems. Because you can have your party, you vote for your party, but you act with the public professionally. The role of government is to inform people on every step it takes in the interest of the people. It's not for itself, it's for the people. And people may or may not agree with all decisions, and the government must understand that and appreciate that. And both the government and the opposition should not see themselves as enemy. We are citizens who have an interest in our country. We put ourselves forward to serve. The people will decide who they would. I remember before, people were engaging their parties because the people themselves had to contribute to the parties, the growth of the party, and so forth. You had barbecue, you had dances. All these people don't care about that because as far as they're concerned, the politician must provide those things. I remember people used to pay for their t-shirt, pay for their bus ride. So they wanted nothing free to support their party. And when they go to a meeting, they want to hear you articulate your vision for the country. No, it's not so. It's who can give the better free and tell the better lies that come through. You know, there was an issue in Trinidad some elections ago. It was not general elections or local government elections. And the people on both sides were getting naughty. And the commissioner of police invited the prime minister, the present prime minister now, and the leader of the opposition, the present one now, to a meeting with him and his men, and to discuss with them that they would not tolerate the behavior of their supporters. And they had to speak to their supporters, and even on the platform, to make the announcement that they would not be tolerated to break the law. In Dominica, if you're on one side, you say things and you get free. If you're on the other side, you say things, you get arrested, and so forth.
Okay, caller. Thank you.
And that is not fair. You cannot, because what you do when you do that, you create anger. This guy in St. Joseph made a statement about the minister.
Caller, we have some other calls coming in. I'm going to have
Yeah,
some.
sure. I'm going to run it quickly. He made an issue about the minister, and he said some really threatening things. Nothing happened to him. I just read an issue a while ago from a liberal rights circulated that the match that was held on Wednesday was a match against the state of Dominic. When you do those things, you kind of really, insult people, and we have to bring back respect, professionalism, and we have truth into it. Unless we do that, we can call it bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's take
Thank
this
you,
call
caller.
quickly. This person has been trying for a while. You're live on the other side.
Yes, good evening to you, young lady. Good evening to all the panelists.
Good evening. Good evening.
You know,
Good evening.
you ask a very important question. And the whole idea comes from the old colonial mentality, and that even exists now: divide and conquer. The first thing is that I recall in Dominica politics, you had your side, you had your views. You had a public service, I know, very senior public service. They had their views, but they never went outside and expressed those things. Right now, you have a situation where if you're not supporting that person, you are hated. In fact, you are advised wherever you see them go up in their face, in the church, in the cemetery, wherever. So that whole thing, plus generally, and not
Caller, you're breaking up. We can't hear you. Try and give us a call back. Let's take another call. You're live on the other side. Okay, caller. You're going to have to give us a call back as well. Let's. You're live on the other side. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening to the entire panel.
Good
So,
evening.
Mr. Sam, how are you doing?
My friend, I was missing you. Now I feel better. How are you doing?
I'm not as good as you. First of all, I really earlier on in your preamble before you started your program, you made you played this voice clip of my good friend Blessings where he made the statement. I'm really looking forward to next week Tuesday that the statement that Roosevelt Skerritt made in that place before Granby, where he asked the Granby people to not Granby people, help me, Belvie, that when members of the opposition come to ask them to vote for them, I'm really hoping that you can dash them with hot water and tell them move on Roosevelt Skerritt step.
That's what he said?
Me next Thursday you can.
If you send me that clip, if you send me that clip, my friend, you know. But do you support what the gentleman said? I'm asking you. Do you think what he said is proper?
I'm going to send you that clip, Sam.
Yeah, but let me ask you: do you think what the gentleman said that I play was appropriate?
What did you say?
Do you think what he said that was played was appropriate?
What my good friend from San Jose?
Our good friend, not your good friend alone. He's my good friend. Do you think what he said was correct? He should have said that.
Something have to give some time.
Well, you have to say yes or no.
Well, he
You know,
just
my
told you
friend.
something has to give. Thank you,
Okay,
caller.
thank you for your-
He's what about his?
Yeah.
He said something had. Let's see the call that's coming in.
Our guests haven't even gotten
Just
to
1
respond.
second. Okay. Caller, you're live on the other side.
Good night.
Good night.
I want to say special good night to Alex. Alex Bruno, that's the mobile man, my brother.
My brother, what's going on?
Alex Bruno know me, my brother. Alex,
Very well.
I want to applaud you, my brother. You said that well. What you're talking a statement when everything go wrong with your party, my brother, you belch out and or you explain to the people, especially the opposite, the leader. You know, sometimes I don't know, it's a hatred always.
I think he's
We lost
fallen
that
off the
one.
line, yeah.
People, so how you can be a mentor to mentor people and all the time a devisation that they are. You're supposed to work with the government, my brother. Alex Bruno, my brother. And the panel, good night, sisters and brothers.
Okay.
Good night.
I find tonight we're stressing a lot on opposition not working with the people. You know, but I think it's like both sides.
Both
It's
sides.
so
Yes.
necessary.
It's both
And I
sides.
think I should correct myself because when we came off, I made a statement and you all helped me to understand what I said wrong. But what I was trying to say is that I
There's a
don't
couple
think.
calls coming in.
Okay, Kenya, I'll take them just now.
I just want you to.
Look, you're trying to cut me off.
No, I just want people to get
Call.
across.
Let's take the call. Caller, you live?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Earlier on, I heard the other gentleman, not Sam Affel, the other gentleman,
Kenny Green.
Mhm.
talked about percentage of which party had what percentage, and so on.
Mhm.
But none of you spoke about the amount of big aircraft that came to the airport to bring in people from overseas that was paid to vote for the Dominican Labour Party. It was the first time in history that such big airplanes came to Dominica, and the amount came to Dominica to bring paid voters for the Labour Party, and also the RSS, the regional army, right, was brought to Dominica, was called to Dominica to fight against people, Salisbury people, a day before the election, 1 day before the election, right? So I don't understand why none of you guys mention those things in all your deliberations.
Okay.
Let
Thank you,
me
caller.
clarify that quickly. My friend, the record of all the flights with all the numbers that came into Dominica is a matter of public record. You can find them. I can assure you, if you did do the research, you would find that they didn't have big planes coming in, and the numbers are far less than what has been purported. So just for the record, if you want to know the facts, I just told you the facts. If you want to,
I think one of the problems is quite frankly an unwillingness to admit loss. And the opposition lost 1,000 votes at the last election. So people who are listening, we're not telling you that you should support the Labour Party or that you should not support the UWP. There's a point. Just like when we were young, you play saki tape, you play cricket, and there's a guy who comes on and he gets out and he doesn't want to leave and he just mashes up the whole game. You've got to admit at some point that the political process has validity. But if you say that the same process that makes people vote for you in Marigot, vote for you in Salisbury, vote for you in Roseau North, and help Joshua win Newtown, Roseau South, does not work magically because it just doesn't work, then you invalidate the entire process, even for yourself.
but there's a situation in the U.S. where Alex is. I usually we follow what the U.S. do. What Donald Trump followed Dominican politics with the Stop the Steal movement. We haven't had a word from Alex in a while, and he's our guest.
Yeah.
Alex, you're hearing all of this thing. Give us some wisdom.
But can you frame a particular question? Because I would like to focus my response to something that you
Okay, let's frame. There's a perception, again, by the opposition that and they seem stuck in that mode, that the only reason we lost is because we were cheated of the election. 2005, 2009, 2014, 2019, and there's almost no preparation, and that's the preparation from the night of the election, the Stop the Steal Dominica movement, and it goes on until the next election. How do you break that cycle? Because apparently you were the strategist, I believe,
Yes.
at one point during the campaign. How do you break that to where you really get a positive platform so people can really vote for you?
Sam, I never discuss party matters, personal issues publicly. And yes, I was appointed the strategist for the UWP, but I never worked as a strategist. I said so. Okay. I never convened, I never had any strategic session with any member of the party from any level, and a lot of my effort fell flat. So I cannot take credit for strategizing UWP's campaign at all. Okay. The only thing I did was honestly, I had a free hand in organizing the first outcoming event in May. If you remember that first political event on the Bayfront in May, where the party came out at first and present the campaign, that was me, 100%. But after that, I had no involvement whatsoever in terms of a strategy, direction.
But Alex, as a commentator, surely you should at some point step in and start to disavow the notion that the opposition was prevented from winning the election by nefarious means. At some point, someone has to step up and say, you know what, I am a political commentator. So, for example, Peter Wickham will poll, the elections will happen, the results will happen, and he'll say, this is a consequence of things that we saw and predicted. But what has happened is that even what you call reasonable people stay silent and let the voices dominate that say the elections were stolen, 8,000 people came in. It's really all nonsense. We know it's nonsense.
Well,
okay?
yeah, it's difficult to claim numbers if you don't have facts to claim numbers. I mean, people did come in, and in small constituencies, that can change a scenario. In Grandford, for sure, and other small areas, we have seen certain things move in Castle Bruce and other places. So, but that is not even the big issue. The big issue is you shouldn't have so much support on the ground so that the votes that are coming in should not be able to eclipse your support. Why is your support base not more than it is you? If after 20 years, you should be able to garner more support. Because I am looking at figures now, professionally, and the figures that I'm seeing so I'm baffled by what I am seeing Dominicans are saying statistically, scientifically, and what people are claiming Dominicans are saying. Dominicans are not saying the same thing politicians saying, It is very clear what Dominicans want in politics today. Right now, as we speak, I didn't poll people who are living in Guadeloupe and St. Lucia and Martinique. The Dominicans are responding, and it would be amazed if some politicians would see this. Now, I cannot come because I was asked to do work. I can't come and declassify work. But based on what I am seeing, I think the election situation in Dominica is not a one-faceted thing. Yes, the incumbent party has an election winning machinery, and they know how many votes to get. They count the votes well. They plan, they strategize, and they get the votes out. The other side do not quite have that machinery, and instead probably play the blame game, which is never going to cause you to win an election. What has to happen is, first of all, plan, strategy, execution of strategy, narrative, change approach, retool, make some wholesale, deep, conscious changes, and represent. So the majority, overwhelmingly on the ground, will come with you. But if you cannot demand an overwhelming Dominican support, it's going to be difficult to win an incumbent that is so very well entrenched with finances, with the tool to win, with a machinery in place. It's going to be very difficult for the present status quo to remain as is, and a new party win an election in Dominica at this point.
Maybe it's because it's so simple to me, but I was in commercial aviation, and anyone can find out how many people flew into Dominica during a period. The FAA has that, Guadeloupe have that, everybody you fly through have that. So the notion that you had this mass number of people coming in could be easily...
The phones are blowing up.
We only have 4 minutes. So one more call. Let's take this.
We can take more than one.
Caller, you're live on the other side. It depends on how long the caller speaks. So caller, please keep it short and sweet.
Yes, good night.
Can we get some volume?
You know this other side is the dangerous side, the lying side. Someone Raphael, this is I had the power. I'll put a voodoo on you to talk to every dog and lie to every dog.
Let's go. Let's change that.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you for your contribution. You see, Alex, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Caller, you're live on the other side.
Yes, good evening, lady, and good evening to the gentlemen.
Good evening.
Gentlemen, sorry. Mr. Kenny Green, you are saying that the Labour Party has been winning elections fair and square all the while. I don't know whether the host is familiar with the trend of voting in Dominica in certain constituencies. I mean, okay, you say 8,000 people were not brought in to vote, but there were ghost voting. People from one constituency came in to vote in other constituencies by bus loads that they were not registered to vote in, and they just come in to vote. Now, I don't know how some lived in the US for a while. Kenny Green, I don't know how familiar we are with Roseau Central. Tell me, by what stretch of the imagination could Melissa Skerrit, the wife of the Prime Minister, the worst candidate that has gone up for Roseau Central, win by 200 votes? Tell me if you're familiar with voting in Roseau Central.
Okay, caller, thank you.
Thank you.
But we had international observers that
No. I want to again.
We really
I say one more call, right?
Again,
let's go. Let's end the show on this one. Now.
Again, you have someone who's living abroad for a long time. I think that sounded like Roy Williams. The Melissa Skerrit's family is a Roseau family. Her father had a popular Roseau establishment for many years, and they registered a lot of new voters. The fact is, I did not make a statement of anything other than the idea that the elections were stolen from the opposition is a myth. Okay, there may be nuances of how many people came in to vote, which, by the way, is not illegal. And I think we need to again be clear about this, because people who supported the opposition also came in. They came in by Valferry.
But can we take one more?
No, we can't. It's too late.
They're shutting us. Well, we have 2 minutes, Take one call.
Take one call. And
Take one call.
They started us late today too, so show in my phone.
Caller, you're live on the other side.
Yes, good evening, Tanya. Good evening to the entire panel.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Miss Tanya, before I say what I have to say, let me warn you briefly. You must be careful with Mr. Sam, When he can't cut you off, he'll get rid of you on the program,
Well,
Okay. Leave it like that.
yes, let's leave it like that, sir.
Mr. Sam.
What's up, my friend?
We're talking about the division, right? When before you born, your opposition leader have the right to respond to a budget address by every prime minister, and this prime minister have not listened to the opposition leader for 6 consecutive sittings or whatever years, and then when his time came for him to to respond to his budget, they stole 2 hours from you. Never said nothing. This thing have been continuing for too long. Right now, we're in a lot of trouble with this thing. You are never, when they asked to get rid of Q95, you were right here. You never said nothing. So this is why we get ourselves to where we are in Dominica. You know that. Good night.
All
We're
right.
helping sustain Q95.
Helping the support. I don't know.
But
anyway, Alex.
Alex.
Yeah, you want to thank Alex?
No,
Tanya,
you
they
go
say I'm
ahead.
cutting you off. No, I don't want your fans to
No,
say
he realized he cutting me off. Go ahead, man. You was hosting your show real nice there. I was just on a back seat. I was on a back seat enjoying it. Hey. Listen, Mr. Bruno, you have any closing remarks? Because this is the end of it for us.
Yeah, well, and the answer to the problem is not going back. It's looking back, but moving forward. The issues, a lot of them that were brought up, especially when the calls start coming in, is we're rehashing things that were tried in the ballot box, and the results went against, I guess, what some of us expected. I'm not saying that there had not been strategical things that give advantage to the incumbent party. I'm not saying that there's not a resemblance of unfairness. But in politics, when you want to win power, there's a lot of things that can be done to win power. And when you win, you try to do whatever you have to do. So I think if you want to win power, you have to be prepared to do the work, to get dirty, to lab away yourself if you have to, do what is necessary to win.
Get dirty.
Yeah, if you have to get dirty, in politics is not a contest, a morality show, You have to be able to do what is necessary to win an election, outside of just breaking the law and being, belligerent and radical and criminal. You can sometimes bend the law, work on the penumbra of the Constitution, do what has to happen, because power and politics are different things. So if you do not understand how to acquire power will continue to elude you. So I would like to advise probably those people who are really litigating past things, especially following those past things and the results went against you again, to start thinking of new things and see how you can possibly do something different, which might work in your favor better. But to really litigate the past that you lost on already is never a wise thing in politics.
Well, thank you for joining us, Mr. Bruno. We look forward to hearing about you and your group, or whatever you want to refer to it as.
But we have to bring him back on again.
In the near future. Yeah, it was nice having you.
Yeah, very nice.
Dominica, thanks for locking on to the other side. We'll see you guys.